a red flag flying here.
And welcome to Political Unmuted with me, John D. Clare, and much more importantly, the Dream Team, starring into my top left-hand corner, Paul Daly.
Hello.
On my middle left-hand side screen, Stuart Sutherland.
Hello.
Directly beneath me, by no means is a measure of importance. It should be the other way around. Samantha Townsend.
Hello.
I keep seeing your thing because you crop up on my Facebook timeline. You have the most interesting and amazing life. The things that crop up on your Facebook are just to die for. And at the very bottom of my screen, holding the team together, the amazing, marvelous Laura Lee Daly. Before we go anywhere, listeners, I have an apology to make. In a slip of the tongue, I mentioned last week that our jingles don't have any inverted commas proper music. And of course I meant by that commercial music, So you will want to know, listeners, that I have been duly eviscerated by the team, and I am eating a humble pie here. Of course it's proper music and really rather marvellous music, some of it, but nevertheless it's not commercial. We can't do this, as we'd have to have adverts on all this. Before we start as well, did any of you see Frankie Boyle, New World Order this week? Well, the two things about it. First of all, Frankie Boyle always makes me squirm. He just goes too far for me all the time. Do you know what I mean? He just goes beyond what I can cope with. But he's still in our format. Genuinely, he's still in our format. But oh golly, we've got a long way to go before we're as good as it. There was just a section when they were talking about Black Lives Matter, and I just thought, this is the most brilliant TV I've listened to in a long, long time. So Frankie, we want an advert on your program, please. You pinched our format, but it was brilliant. Right, okay, let's go.
We don't know. Oh, hang on.
Daily, moment of the week for you.
Right, I've made a decision. I think there was a few this week. I have to go with the I think it's over 15,000 complaints about the diversity dance on Britain's Got Talent. Has got to be my moment of the week for just sheer snowflakery. It's outrageous. I mean,
they're just dying to be offended by anything.
Well, that's it, and that's usually only ever afforded to us, isn't it? Us snowflakey lefties. But I think with the amount of complaints, over 15,000, that's organised snowflakery. That is, the right wing of nationalists have really come out in force against this one, which was actually, I thought, just a beautiful dance, and it was really positive. The message was positive. It was hard hitting. It was, strong, but it certainly wasn't worth complaining about in my eyes. And I thought it was brilliant, and solidarity with all the diversity members. And I hope they keep going with it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that was pointed out actually on the Frankie Boyle show is that when you have these assertions that Black Lives Matter, and then you have these explosions of anger about that, it shows that something needs to be done. It just demonstrates the prevailing and ongoing prejudice against people of colour. And the more it happens, the more it shows the need to assert that we need to do something about prejudice against people of different races in this country. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I think Lewis Hamilton's got into trouble for wearing a T-shirt at the last
Yeah, he did. It was the Breonna Taylor T-shirt, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Arrest the cops who killed her.
he killed Bill. Yeah, sort of. I think he's in trouble about that. Right. Thank you, Samantha.
Just to say, Stephen Patterson rightly says 15,000 out of 80 million is a drop in the water. So we should not be too discouraged by that. Is it 80 million? I thought it was sort of 64 million in the UK, but never mind. But yeah,
67-ish, I think.
Yeah, but it's still in terms of the amount of complaints that
it's a lot.
it's ever had. It's I think it's possibly the highest now.
My moment of the week is smiling as I hear that Charlie Elphick has been sent to prison. I dislike Tory MPs and I dislike people who grew up women. So this was a lovely moment for me, seeing some justice be done. Before we came on air, Paul quite rightly pointed out that the conviction rate for rape and sexual assault is disgustingly low.
And getting worse all the time.
Me and Laura have talked about this before. You know, we've had conversations with women who have said they would rather be raped again than to talk to the police about it again, because talking to the police was more traumatic than the event. So well done to those women for coming forward. It is a case of a very powerful man taking advantage of his position, and that is what the judge said. What really sort of shocks and upsets me is when you look at the background of this. He was suspended by the Conservatives when the allegations came out, but then he was given the whip back after that so that he could vote in confidence of Theresa May when her confidence vote was called, which is disgusting, turns my stomach. He had 34 character witnesses, many of them MPs that weren't disclosed, who and that's basically like a closing of ranks around this guy. And not only that, but when he lost his position as an MP when he was deselected by his Conservative Association in the last election, they put his ex-wife in his job. So it's just so many layers of anti-democratic wrongness. So I'm glad he's going to prison. I wish he got more than 2 years, and of that he's probably only going to serve 1, if that. So, but yeah, it's good to see bad people getting justice.
Thank you. Agreed. Stuart, moment of the week.
Mine will be a relatively short one. Basically, I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed Ed Miliband eviscerating Boris. And Boris having to sit there looking like he had the expression of a deflated balloon. It was probably the best moment that we've seen in the Commons all week.
Now, all I've seen of that, Stuart, was the moment he says, it's not even doing what he says it's doing. What Boris was saying was that it was protecting us against something or other. I can't remember. And he says, all it's doing, and then he mentioned the 2 things it was doing, and I can't remember that either, which is appalling, isn't it? And then he says, if I'm wrong, if there's a single clause doing, Prime Minister, what you say this bill is going to do, can you point it out to me, and I'll gladly yield to you. And of course Boris just sits there, and he said, no, I'll sit down, you can tell me I'm wrong, and that this does do, you can prove it to me that this does what you're saying it's doing. And still no action from Boris. And then he says, and that's because you haven't read it.
Details, man.
Well done. Does it matter, Stuart? I think that nobody gives a damn that the Prime Minister's a buffoon. I keep testing how much people are prepared to, whether people are starting to be critical of the Tory party on that Aycliffe political community debate. And the answer is they're not. They're still down your throat when you point something that the Tories have done usually along the lines of, well, Labour would be worse. So I don't think people care that the Prime Minister's a lazy buffoon.
I think it's less about Boris and more about the Labour Party finally having a bit of a sharp stick to poke him with. I think that was the important moment for me. We've all seen Boris be useless and lazy and, you know, a deflated balloon. But it's nice to see a bit of sharpness from the Labour Party.
Yes, yes. Go get him, Ed. I always liked Ed Miliband, by the way. I was a big Ed Miliband fan in my time. And finally, thank you, Stuart. And finally, Paul, moment of the week.
Just going to add on to that previous one where it was pointed out that the oven-ready deal is now being touted as Boris has been. Actually, it's very vague and not a very good deal at all. And it's so ridiculous. The whole thing's so ridiculous. And that brings me on to my moment of the week, which is just how things are working out on the front line, as it will. And I don't like to use that really, because the front line is a place where you're at war, and we're not at war, but we are going in and working during the COVID times. And it's just, I wanted to point out how difficult it is as someone who has to go to work in a school where if you follow all the regulations, if you follow all the guidelines, you know that you are not COVID secure. I've got a cold at the moment, and I've picked that up since going back to work. And you know, if you're going to get a cold, you could get COVID. Yesterday, I didn't go to a parish council meeting as a parish councillor. And the reason I didn't go was because there are people who have been shielding for months who have to go to that meeting. And there are currently a number, I'll not go into exact details, but there are a number of people who I teach who are self-isolating, who I've been in direct contact with, who have to go for a COVID test. And I was thinking, well, I feel like the responsibility is on me and people like me not to pass this on to our vulnerable people. I feel that the government has absolved itself of any responsibility, and this responsibility is on me. And the only place I'm really allowed to go, and so I feel like I can't really go and see my mum anymore, and I can't really go and see my sister, and I can't really do all these things, and you know, see my children can't see their cousin. And because of this responsibility we have to keep everyone safe, but I can go to the pub, but I can't really go to the pub because I would feel terribly guilty if I was the person who passed something on. And I feel like I've had it before, but then, you know, I could get it again because it looks like we can get it again. And we're just in this ridiculous situation where if you are worried about passing it on, you feel like you're almost imprisoned by the system that we're in, but it's your responsibility to deal with that. You can go somewhere where there's a till, or you could have a really safe thing in your house, but actually that's really bad. The COVID marshals will be out to get you, you know, and people's reaction to being asked to wear a mask, which is, you know, for most people, it's quite an easy thing to do. Yet there's no huge backlash over this real, this awful assault on our civil liberties of going around each other's house, and socializing with your friends and family, the free thing that we do, the thing that we can do, the joy that we can get out of life for free. And you can't do that anymore. You can go out to the pub and you can spend some money, and I'm fully supportive of those businesses as well. I'm not saying, you know, those businesses don't deserve to go, but it's such an awful thing where you can't go and do something for free with your family, but you must go out, but you can have these, like the freedom to go out and give COVID to people in this situation. We're seeing the cases going up and up and up. And it's really hard psychologically to deal with that as a frontline worker. And then you see a lot of people who are frontline workers and have been frontline workers who have almost been demonized for going out as well. And I'm not demonizing those people who go out. Imagine if you go out every single day, you work on the bins or you work in the NHS or you do something, and you can do these things. And then they were told, oh, what a horrible person you are for going out and having a little bit of a social life, despite the fact that they've been on the front line. They have been able, so they've been going into people's houses and repairing things, or they've been, you know, having to they didn't have a choice, or they've been working in a shop and then they've been made to feel guilty by other people because they had a little bit of fun. When you're in that situation, the only thing you want to do is have a little bit of a release and a little bit of fun. And I think, like, you know, I've worked throughout, but not to this extent and not to this kind of way where you're thinking, I'm going to get this at any time, I'm going to pass this on to someone else, and that changes things. It feels strange.
Thank you so much. I think that it's a particularly dangerous time, and it must be, I mean, it's beginning to explode again, and it must be terrifying to be on the front line like you are. However, which brings us to segue.
Now it's time for the big story.
And indeed, the big story is coronavirus, and the latest news, and the explosion, and the R rate, and everything else that's happening. Samantha, should we scorn or should we panic?
Well, as with anything, John, I advocate for the middle way. Somewhere in between scorn and panic is a good place.
So we need to scanic.
Panic,
or porn.
Yeah. Obviously, panicking doesn't help, and we really all need to really focus on our mental health at the moment, because we have been through a lot, and we are, at the best case scenario, by what the doctors are saying at the moment, only halfway through of this ordeal. The doctors are saying that there's a general consensus we're going to have a second peak in the next 6 months. So we need to look after ourselves, because we've got a long slog in front of us. So don't panic, but do wash your hands, and follow the actual advice that's being issued by the actual government. Even if I know a lot of us here are skeptical of this government, and we're not happy with the way things have been managed, but there is a lot of misinformation going out there. There was a viral Facebook post at the beginning of the week telling people not to go and get themselves tested, because if you don't get yourself tested, then you won't add to the numbers, and then we'll be able to avoid a Christmas lockdown. And that's obviously totally false news, because unfortunately for us, there will be other consequences to people not getting tested, and that will lead to more people dying unnecessarily, and possibly more disruptive lockdowns in the future. That's if you can get a test. That's the other thing, isn't it? So it seems like the rate of infections isn't going up as fast as it was at the start. However, is it possible to compare the figures we've got now to the figures we had in March? Because remember, back in March, you couldn't get tested unless you had to be like hospitalized. So are we just earlier on the journey with a bit more visibility as to the actual spread in the population? You know, it's anybody's guess, really. So optimistically speaking, hopefully the spread in the community is slower than it was before, and hopefully we've got a better idea about where the spread is, and hopefully local lockdowns will help slow that down so that the people who do need hospital treatment can get it, because of course that is where things really went wrong in sort of Italy at the start of all this, where, you know, there was all of that really terrifying footage of people not being able to get in a hospital when they needed to, and that was the real concern in the start here in the UK, that our hospitals were going to get overwhelmed. So it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because slow is better for the NHS and better for the general saving of lives, but also we do have to think about our mental health. We do have to think about the fact that we're really not emotionally prepared for this, and I really hope, obviously, that the government will look closer at the support that is available for businesses and for people who've lost their jobs, and really look at a very welcome U-turn on cutting off furlough in October, because it looks like we're going to need it for a lot longer.
Absolutely, and so many people's livelihoods depending on that. Laura, I mean, one of the things that strikes me about this is that here we are, the opposition. I find myself falling out on Facebook with people who called me all the names under the sun because I wasn't voting for Boris, because I criticised Boris. And now they're the ones who are slagging up the government, calling us not to be muzzled with the masks and to ignore the rule of six and all the rest of it. And I'm this little Labour person is having to defend the government. I mean, sort of, are you defending the government as well? Are you saying do what your government tells you?
I am staunchly defending common sense. I think.
And you say this government's got common sense, does it?
No, I'm not saying I'm defending the government. I'm saying I'm defending common sense. By which I mean, because I'm such a socialist, I think it's important that you look after other people, and masks don't necessarily protect you at all, but they do help protect other people. That is just a fact. And so if you can put other people first, then surely wearing a piece of material over your face for a little bit of time while you're going to a shop, it's not going to take anything away from you. It's just something simple that you can do. I recognise there are people who can't wear a mask for whatever reason, but the majority of people should be able to. And so yeah, I defend socialism and protecting other people, not necessarily the government.
Now your husband, Laura, he had a real diatribe at the beginning of this show about this kind of meeting socially and you not being able to meet in groups of six in your family. What do you think about that? Not that I'm trying to cause marital discord here, but I mean, sort of, when you're talking about common sense, doesn't, if it's spreading too fast, doesn't it not just make common sense to cut down the opportunities for social interaction?
Yeah, I think it does, and I don't think Paul would argue that. I think the point he's making is that we are being told we can't possibly get together in the safety of our own homes, but we can pay to see each other by going to a pub. And I understand the economy, we have to look after the economy, we have to try and protect businesses and jobs. Of course, that's all important. But if I can get a group of mates together and go grouse hunting, then why can't I get a group of mates together to come and sit in my back garden? You know, it's the
Can you not go grouse hunting in your back garden? I mean, I don't guarantee much success, but nevertheless, you could try, couldn't you? Really?
My farmhouse is being renovated, John.
Stuart, I mean, one thing that Samantha mentioned that I think is absolutely clear is that the mental health of the nation is under huge stress at the moment. I mean, we really are a very fly off the handle nation at the moment, and many people behaving quite extremely over things which don't just warrant the degree of anger. I mean, what would you say about mental health? How can the government, and how should the government be acting to try and calm down these excesses and this sort of what was it I read in the Guardian, that sort of the number of panic attacks and fear amongst the nation is just spiraling out of control at the moment. I mean, what can we do about this, Stuart?
Fund mental health support properly. You know, that would have been good. 10 years of funding that would have set us off a little bit better. But I've read out of them spending any more money on mental health support from day one. You would have thought that you could have seen this coming, you know, a million miles off, and they've just done nothing for it.
Yeah. And actually it's very cheap, isn't it? Because you don't actually have to fund everybody to have a counsellor, the other type of counsellor. What I don't know whether you saw the work that's been done by Pins and Needles. Pins and Needles is effectively like a women's institute-y type organisation where in normal times women come together and they maybe do crafts together or whatever. But during COVID-19, they got AAP money to go around and send like craft kits to retired people, and they did a afternoon tea pack, and they did a watercolor pack, and those little things actually quite cheap for the council to fund, and loads of volunteers involved. So it not only helps the mental health of the volunteers, but it also is just a little bit of a pick-me-up, a little bit of something to look forward to for those people.
Paul, what's all this about a moonshot program? I mean, what's going
It's
on?
more fantasy. They just say things, and they expect you to take it. So we're going to spend 100 billion, which is more than the entire education budget, on some testing, so everyone can get a test. But we know that at the moment that the testing capacity in labs is the thing that's limiting how many tests there are being done. They really don't want us there. So Samantha earlier on referred to a meme that went round saying, if we don't get tested, we can have Christmas, basically. That came from Matt Hancock saying people who don't have symptoms are getting tested, and this is the problem. That they don't have, but we know that asymptomatic people can get tested, should get tested, and they were encouraging that before. And then when you look into that a little bit further, you find out that some people are being told by 111 or 119, whichever they ring, that actually now you need 3 symptoms to get tested. They are limiting the amount of tests because of lab capacity. So is this 100 billion to build labs? Is it to, what is it to do? Is it to give it the Circle? Is it to give it the G4S? These are the things, these companies that keep on failing, the test, track and trace system, which is now being referred to as NHS test, track and trace, which isn't anything to do with NHS, it's actually to do with private companies doing that, but they want to lump it on the NHS, and eventually they'll say, well, actually the NHS didn't do test, track and trace very well. For now, they're saying, how dare you insult our lovely NHS who are doing test, track and trace so very, very well. I'm going to use an example as well. One of my friends runs a football team, and they've been running the test, track and trace system really well, taking all the phone numbers, even though it should have been an app because it was going to be world beaten. It was going to be a world beaten app, but it never materialised after spending a fortune. But never mind, that at least someone got richer out of it, because that seems to be the mantra of this government. So one of their friends got richer out of that. But the test, track and trace system, they're physically writing down phone numbers. One of the members of this team tested positive at school. But he found out about this, the person who runs it. No one else, not one person from that team was contacted by test, track and trace, despite the fact that that child reported, I play for this football team, this is the key contact to ring. It didn't go out, it didn't get cascaded out. They aren't doing the checks that they're supposed to do. They're making people do a load of paperwork, and then it's meaningless. It just becomes absolutely meaningless. The whole thing, they just say things. Yeah, sure.
I saw a thing when we were trying to do when we were trying to do this app thing, and they did a program about the test, track and trace in Turkey. And what happens is there in Turkey, the doctors knock off at 4 o'clock, and then they spent 3 hours going round actively catching all the people who've been named on the track and trace and telling them to isolate, and and that is 100 times more effective than sort of all the show and blasé. And you're absolutely correct. Actually telling people and catching people and telling them to stay in their houses is the way to move forward here, and all the rest of it seems to be flim-flam to me. Do you think that, why is he doing this? Is this some kind of gamble to keep control of the party?
It's all PR. Everything's PR, and you can say anything you want about Boris Johnson, but he's been excellent at PR. He managed to, and the Conservatives managed to do this before him as well, managed to, when they didn't get Brexit done, when they caused the Brexit problem, they managed to lump that on the opposition. Anyone who says anything about this government, they are actually the problem. The people are the problem. We're all against each other. The actual reason that all those people in care homes died was because of local councils. not because nationally all the local councils did exactly the same thing, because that's what they were told to do by central government. They managed to try and deflect that onto local councils. Everything that they do is a PR battle. That is what they're good at. They're trying to convince people that they're doing the right thing. They know they're doing the wrong thing. They know they aren't very good, but it doesn't matter whether or not they're very good. It matters whether or not people think they're good. So that is what they're trying to do. So people can see through it, and people will not behave in a way that that supports, anything. Like, everyone's confidence is totally gone in this system. And I'll take this example. In our school, we have bubbles. We follow the regulations to the letter. We follow the guidance to the letter, despite the fact that they're pretty much designed for private schools. Isolate them in this wing or whatever. But we have a system where children travel into school together because the rules on transport are different. They travel into school together. They have to wear a mask unless they don't, and then they can still come in. And they come in on a mask. They're sitting together, breathing the same air, in the same, the way it filters around a car. They'll have that. Then they come in, split into bubbles, and they spend their time, and we keep them separate all day. We do a really good job keeping bubbles separate. And then they go out and get back onto the transport together. And now, how is that a bubble? How is them mixing outside straight away? And if they socialise together, they're doing something wrong. So those poor children who have spent all day together, if they went for a kickabout together, even within their bubble, no, you're not allowed to do that. You can't do that. You can't just go for a kickabout. It's got to be, something that's paid for. The confidence is gone, and children can see this. Children are just saying, this is ridiculous. Why are we doing this? And they're going along with it because they care about the teachers and they're interested in what the teachers have to say.
Stuart, do you feel that the government has lost all control of the way that people are behaving? I mean, and what can they do to get back that confidence?
Can you ever get it back? I don't think you can. I think when the second, we had Dominic Cummings going for his eye test, everything just filtered away from that moment onwards, and we'll never get back to where we could have been.
Laura, what can we do what might the government do to regain the people's confidence?
Use the 100 billion that they're going to spend on this fantasy project, to build a time machine, go back to January and deal with this properly.
I mean, what you're talking about is the only answer to have an election and start again.
I don't know, because this might take us on a whole new tangent, but this whole experience has been as divisive as Brexit has been. Some of the polls I've seen, people are using the word hate. I hate people who don't wear masks, or I hate the government telling us, and it's really, really divisive, and it's dangerous. And I don't think elections at this time really serve any purpose. We need to get this sorted, and we need to get past it.
So good Labour people like us, Laura, we need to double down behind the government and sort of urge the government to please, for God's sake, do something sensible, and sort of urge people to calm down and just let's do as we're told and get through it. Sam, you got something when I said an election. What were you going to say when I talked about an election?
Well, first of all, we've had elections postponed because of this. We can't do any campaigning. There are vacant seats on town councils because of this pandemic. And yeah, honestly, we've got this fantastic government, and I think they should definitely sort this out. And I do not want to be in government right now. So,
might be the best thing that ever happened to us, losing that election in December. Right.
Definitely. I disagree. I'd love us to be in government. I'd absolutely love us to be in government.
I think
because there's no way anyone could have done any worse. It's really strange because people will say, "Oh, but Corbyn, imagine how bad it would have been." How bad do you think? What would happen? We've got climate change is going to happen. The world is going to go up in a fireball. We've got people dying of coronavirus. We've got people getting forced coronavirus getting forced into care homes by like the rules that they came in. We've got this ridiculous situation where they're going to spend 100 billion on a testing system, but they won't like allow us to use a community centre to split the school out so that so that people aren't infecting each other. And you just go, come on, how could you do any worse? How could anyone do any worse? Oh, I wouldn't want to do that job. It's really hard being Prime Minister. Well, most people don't want to be, and most people don't like try to get elected as Prime Minister. You know, you should at least know what you're doing.
Sorry, Paul, thank you very much indeed. I agree with you. And one of the things about the Labour Party is that we tend to put people first, whereas the Tories generally put the economy first and making money first. And I think that we couldn't have done any worse sort of with the economy.
On either front.
And I think we would have done better with people. I've just got one question before we go, and we're already a minute over. So you're going to have to be well behaved on this. Short statements only. The hand will come up, and you'll be and I can't control the mute, but sort of there we go. Are we going to have Christmas this year? Almost yes or no, but I can't stop you. I know I can't stop you talking. Paul, go first. Are we going to have Christmas this year?
Yes, in a totally different form.
I'd love to explore that. No time. Stuart, is Christmas going to be cancelled this year?
No, it'll just be very different, like Paul says.
How different, Stuart?
Well,
In what ways?
Well, we can't have the in-laws over unless I'm shooting grouse on the day.
Like shots of famous grouse whiskey.
Isn't it the father-in-law that's the grouse? But there we go. Sam, has the Grinch taken over? Is the Grinch due to take over Christmas from Santa Claus this year?
It's going to be a very difficult Christmas, I think.
Laura, are you going to be sort of hopeful and say that sort of you're hoping that it'll calm down a bit and we'll be able to...
I can lie if you want me to, but no, I think I'm lucky because I've got Paul and the kids, so we're a little unit that can enjoy Christmas, and we'll make it Christmas for the kids as best we can. But it is going to be completely different, I think. And it's my birthday in January, and I'm not even confident I'm going to have a birthday party this year. So
Black Eyed Friday will still go on though. I bet you.
Of course.
Yeah, you can go out to the pub and have a fight on the.
Laura, I'm just talking to you and not the other ones. Do you not think that people will just ignore it and have Christmas anyway?
Some might. I think there'll be a lot of people who don't. I think there'll be a lot of people who will just be sick to the back teeth of it and want to do everything they can to stop it, and who do care about other people. But yeah, there will be some people who Christmas is a special time of year for a lot of people.
Should we report them? Should we report them to the COVID police?
I mean, I wouldn't.
Are you a grass, Laura?
I'm not a grass. I'm not a grass. I wouldn't cross a picket, and I'm not going to grass. So there.
Okay, thank you. Stuart, God bless you.
Just a quick question on the 6 thing. I grew up in a household of 7.
Yeah.
So would I get grassed on? Would somebody grass me up?
No, you're all right. You're just not allowed anyone else.
Yeah, but
it's your household bubble.
Yeah, but if they don't know us very well and they're just peeking out the windows and they see 7 roughly adult-looking people.
Yes, you could get grassed, but then when the police come...
Yeah.
One of you will have to hide in the cupboard. There you are. You heard it first on Political Unmuted.
They don't come for proper crimes.
Now, at this point, we sometimes have a listener guest, and listener guest, and I was going to have. I asked the head teacher of Bishop Barrington School to either make a statement or send somebody along right last minute, yesterday night. But anyway, he hasn't. So so we're going to take another listener guest question, which is from Chris Barty, who is unable to be with us, but she has sent us a question. and it's to do with this back to 60 announcement. Sort of the women who have lost their pensions for 7 years, isn't it? Had to go without their pensions for 7 years that they thought they were going to have it because of the changes in the pension age, and they went to court about it, and they failed. Sort of the judge says he sympathises. The people always bloody well sympathise, don't they? But he can't do anything about it. Sort of, you've just got to take the hit. And Chris Varty wants us to discuss the back to 60 announcement, and I've completely lost the question. But sort of, I think it was along the lines of, is this a disaster? Is this right or wrong? It was on the political organisers thing. Stuart, what do you reckon to this this announcement?
Well, I've not seen it myself, but clearly I think people should be allowed to retire when they were told they were allowed to retire. It shouldn't be an ongoing game of catch up. So I can imagine there's going to be some anger if it's not good news.
Samantha, speaking for the women, have you any comments?
Well, I shall speak for the women. Me and Laura have campaigned with WASPy women and other.
And me too. Me too. I've done the other match.
Yeah, okay. And John has also campaigned. Many of us have, because it is a case of a huge injustice to those women and their families. Many of them had to end their careers because of ill health or caring commitments that they planned for, and then had the rug taken out from underneath them. So the court ruling that there was enough advertising is obviously wrong, because if there was enough advertising, these ladies would not have planned their lives in the way that they have, and all you have to do is talk to them and talk to about their lives and their situations, and it's just so wrong. It's so unfair. And again, it's one of these things, people have said to me, what is the Labour Party doing about this? And well, it was in our last manifesto, but the people did not vote for us. So we, can't help you. It is a political issue. There was another court ruling before this one, and that court said something along the lines of, you need the government to do something about this, not the judicial system. And absolutely, the government should do something about this. It's totally wrong. And again, it's the poorest women who are affected the most.
That's the most tragic part of it, by the way. I mean, it's sort of the state pension is so appallingly low anyway, and sort of you plan your life out to be able to cope on it, and 7 years without that, without any work, is horrific. Laura, the actual question that Chris sent is the sort of, do you agree with the appeal decision that 1950s women were not discriminated against? Now, sort of, the appeal didn't say to the women, you haven't got a case. It didn't say that sort of go away and just like it or lump it, or sort of, it's or even that it didn't say that what happened to them was wrong or right. Sort of, it said that there was no discrimination. That was what they'd fought it on, the fact that it was a discrimination against women. And they said that they found that there was they could not prove discrimination against women. I mean, that's surely true to a degree, because the pension age has been moved for men as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it has. But when you have, we've got to consider the societal issues that predominantly affect women, and like Samantha said, the plans that these women had put in place, who were predominantly carers and were going to move into those roles once they finished work, on the proviso that they'd be getting money from the government, which obviously didn't happen. And I think one of the arguments from Sir James Eadie, who was the DWP's lawyer, he said that it wasn't discrimination and it wasn't even anything to do with pensions. In fact, they really should have just realised the societal problems that they had. It's not connected to the state pension. The reason why these people don't have any money, it's to do with the society that they're in and whatever sort of working class background they're from, which is
it's not the government's job to do anything about that, presumably.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I think I think it is discrimination, but not just on sex, but on age as well, because these women, like I say, had planned a future, were due to finish work at 60, and had sort of their savings sorted and knew what money was coming in, and then all of a sudden it was like, by the way, you've got to work this extra. And a lot of these women couldn't physically work in a lot of the jobs they were doing, and a lot of them have suffered really badly mentally because they've had to stay in work longer than they wanted to, and the whole thing's a mess. And I think there's definitely an argument for discrimination. I think the fact that the rulings come back to say that there wasn't any proof of it, it is fundamentally wrong. I think if you looked hard enough, you could find it.
Last word, and we're overrunning, Paul, so briefly, please. Where do we go from here now? What will you do now?
I would totally review what we're doing as a society. We're looking at the idea of, we've got increased automation, and all that's happening with increased automation is that people are working for longer hours. There are more people unemployed. There's less pay for jobs. Increased automation should give us better lives. It should allow us to retire earlier. It should allow us to work fewer hours in the week. It should give us a better life. It doesn't. It's not doing that. It's increasing profits for a few people. So we really need to look at how we treat our people, older people in society. And I think the people who are making the decisions on that shouldn't be people who've perhaps worked in boardrooms where, yeah, you know, you can go off, you can do your couple of hours exercise a day, keep yourself really, really fit. But imagine like laying bricks or cleaning floors or something like that until you are 68, or until you know, when they changed the age for women to work. Yes, that was a really bad thing. They've talked about equalisation. Why did women have to come up? It wasn't even a meet them halfway, bring men down and bring women up. It was actually, you all have to work a lot longer because we can't afford to pay for you. Well, actually, COVID's proved you can. You can pay for these things.
I just seem to be interrupting you all the night, and I do apologise.
It's because I'm speaking so much.
But we were talking earlier about youth unemployment, and the fact is that why the hell they levelled up when we have had such problems with youth unemployment, I just do not know. It's sort of just crazy talk. Right, we now have 10 minutes and 2 questions, so it's a choice. So I'm going to let you choose between you, which would you prefer to talk about? Bishop Barrington's gender-neutral toilets, great topic, or what can we do about council tax? Controversial topic. Sam, you can choose what you want to talk about.
I'd rather talk about council tax.
Okay, gender-neutral toilets. I generally agree with gender-neutral toilets, and I understand that there's this danger about there not being a safe place, but sort of it'll only be a safe place when we train men to behave properly. And sort of if that starts in school, that's where it has to start. The answer is not to sort of say men are rapists, so what we're going to do is we're just going to not give them the opportunity. That's not the answer. But
could we not just build toilets where they have like a nice cubicle where they're not all like cramped together and you can look underneath and things like that? Could you not just have a room where you go into
this is actually exactly the problem. Exactly what they've done in Bishop Barrington. They're not gender neutral toilet blocks, they are individually enclosed separate rooms.
That's fine. I've got like a gender neutral toilet in my house. I'm allowed to use any toilet I want to in my house, and they're all gender neutral. And that's what we do. The door on.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you for discussing that. It was my fault that we talked about it. Council tax. Who was going to talk about? Laura to lead.
Okay.
Has Councillor Stead got a point? Is council tax too high?
If that was the point he was making, then yes, he would have a point. Council tax is high, but I think he was more basically trying to have a bash at the Labour Council here. I think what people fundamentally just need to realise is that council tax is just a replacement for poll tax. It's not the council who dictate the tax, it's central government who dictate that tax. And yes, there's some things that certain people have to pay higher rates, if they have a bigger population, or certainly in the northeast there's more people on benefits, so slightly more has to go into the system. So really what you're doing is it's an unfair system that disproportionately affects the poor. I find it absolutely shocking that my council tax is the same for the house we live in, the banding of the house. I think we're banned. I want to say D, but D, yeah, but only just. And so we pay the same amount of tax on our house as Dominic Cummings' mum and dad, who own a ginormous £1 million beautiful farmhouse with outbuildings and all of that. And I'm like, well, that's not right. You could fit our house inside of their house probably 3 times. So it's an unfair system, and I think
the reasons for that, Laurie, just to briefly tell you, is one, because property values in the northeast are so very, very low. So we need to make the same amount of money off our A-band properties that Surrey has to make off its D-band properties. And that's the key there. But the second thing is,
I think
there hasn't been a revaluation for decades, 30 years. And so the fact is that new houses like yours, new posh houses like yours, that are being built, they're being valued at a proper rate. But in fact, the other houses have not been revalued sensibly since the early 1990s. And that's why people with new houses are getting hit disproportionately, because they're finding themselves in very high bands compared to other people. Stuart?
Yeah. So, like, Michael Stade's point was to get his council tax reduced because he lives in a nice house.
E-band.
So, like, he's not seeking tax equality, is he? And he's not looking at any of the court issues he was on about the double taxation. And if you wanted to get rid of double taxation, you could either abolish all the parish and town councils, make sure everywhere had a parish and town council, or get rid of the austerity measures that cut the county council giving a grant back to the places that got double taxed.
Music to my ears.
So which thing is he trying to do? Is he trying to establish a town council in Chesterley Street, abolish Newton Aycliffe's town council, or get rid of austerity?
He hasn't said. And this is a Lib Dem election thing, and none of them are saying. So thank you, Stuart. Those are some really good comments, which I like to hear. Samantha Townsend, come on, up you go. We have 6 minutes left of the programme. Go for it, girl. But leave Paul some time at the end.
Our Lib Dem councillor has submitted the exact same motion to the town council as Michael Stead has. And you know what? I remember reform of council tax being something the Labour Party was talking about. I don't remember it being something that the Lib Dems were talking about. And my Lib Dem councillor, who I respect, he has got lots of experience. He has never voted against a town council budget in the last 4 years since I've been elected. But suddenly he's got a problem with this idea of double taxation because the Lib Dem group have told him he has, and have given him a motion to submit. And I just think it's really dishonest, because he knows that the taxation pays for services. In Shildon, we've got Shildon Civic Hall, we've got our own cemetery, which is run by the town council, we've got a beautiful park, which is all maintained by the town council. It's not a lot of money. When people say double taxation, it sounds like if I get rid of one of these things, if I get rid of Shildon Town Council, then my tax is going to be chopped in half. But it's not. It's something like £5 extra you pay for all of the services you get in from Shildon Town Council. So I am a bit frustrated about it because it is disingenuous. We're coming up to an election, you're posturing, you know, suddenly you've been in the paper 2 weeks in a row, and other people are saying to me, you know, where have you been? Well, actually, I've been everywhere, but I've been working hard and not just taking photos of myself and sending in press releases. So it does sting, it is frustrating, but it's our town council meeting on Thursday and I will air it then.
Just as a question for you before I bring Paul in for the final word of the show, the Lib Dems are focusing this campaign in the south of the county and the red wall constituencies because they reckon it's that they've got Labour on the run there. Sort of guess which part of the county they are definitely not running a double taxation campaign in.
The places where they don't have a parish council, like Chester.
That's right, Chester Street. They're not mentioning it there. Crook. We need to start telling the people of Crook that the Lib Dems are running a campaign to increase their council tax because that's the only way this is going to go away. Right, and thank you, Sam. Best of luck on Thursday. I declared an interest. I've got into awful trouble because I declared an interest. And that was because I was instructed to do so by the County Council solicitor. Okay, and Paul, you have 3 minutes, and I'm going to chop you off at 10 on the dot, and we're going to finish. So, what's your take? Are we able to reduce council tax at all?
I think we should totally get rid of council tax. That would be what I would do. I absolutely detest council tax. I find it an unfair tax. It's unfair on places in the northeast. Considering it's a centrally dictated tax, we all have to do it. It replaced the poll tax. You know, everyone's got to fund their own local areas with this tax, and yet some local areas are a lot poorer. It's a tax on the poor. Now, it was only ever meant to be a temporary measure. So why haven't we looked at it since the early 90s? You know, we won the poll tax argument. That was my first little foray into politics. I was on the little poll tax riots, marches, whatever it was when I was a child. You know, and I remember when it was under John Major when the police stopped hitting us. So it was quite an interesting time in our lives, and poll tax was probably what paid to Margaret Thatcher, really. That was a very, very unpopular tax. They replaced it with something that was also very unfair, but just not as unfair as the original one. When Labour proposed in 2017 a land value tax, which is a much fairer taxation system, much, much, much fairer, it was the garden tax that, you know, the press barons gathered around and said what awful people the Labour Party were going to do because they're going to tax your garden. No, they weren't. We were going to tax people who were land banking, whose property, whose land value is going up faster than any bank account in the world could give you, because they are stopping people from being able to live in homes, putting property up and putting the value of their land up. That was what Labour were going to put paid to. So why don't the Lib Dems, and I agree with them that it is unfair that double taxation happens, you know, it's a very quirky thing and it doesn't cost that much money, but let's just get together and say, right, let's get rid of council tax. Council tax is an awful tax. Let's campaign to central government, because it's nothing to do with the county council, it's nothing to do with the parish council. What's happening with council tax, the only people who can change it is central government. I would like to see Labour campaign on the idea of getting rid of council tax and replacing it with something fair and having an information campaign, because it is absolutely not right that someone in London pays half the council tax It's someone in the northeast of England. It's absolutely ludicrous.
Samantha, there's your thing that you urge Gary Huntingdon to withdraw his stupid motion, which is just setting Lib Dems against Labour in Durham County Council, and come in with the Labour Party to support their campaign to abolish council tax altogether and replace it with something else. Challenge him to do that. That's the cleverest thing I've heard. Unfortunately, I've sent my letter into the Newton News this week, else I would have pitched that idea. And on that bombshell...
There's always another week.
On that bombshell, ladies and gentlemen, the show is coming to an end. Hasn't it gone quickly? I mean, how amazingly quickly it's gone, and how brilliant are these people. Not quite as brilliant as Frankie Boyle's team, but nevertheless getting there. And sort of, I'll be in trouble again. I'll be apologising next week. We're going to finish with No Pass Around, and then what we do is we have a chill out zone where Sam tells us all the things that you've been saying during the show, and we have a little comment on that. So no pass around. Goodbye from to all those people who were going to say I'm not going to stay for the chill out zone. Thank you for listening. See you next week. And Sam and the comments after the song. God bless you all.
Bye bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
And see you in a minute.
In a minute.
My name is Jack Atkinson. I'm not afraid. And I live and die by this vow that I made. The only good fascist, a dead one, they say. And around Maria, we are. When I first left the lonely months ago, told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. But for an ambulance driver, my shot's pretty sure. And around Maria, we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. I told my mother now, mother, be strong. For the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone. For around Maria, we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast, but you armies of darkness, you best do your worst. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past those first. And around Maria, we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around. Keep the red flag flying here.